Hello, and welcome to Canadian Footy Fan Channel. I am your host, Chris, and today I'm presenting you episode 1 of the Canadian Footy Assembly. I'd like to thank all the viewers for joining us today in the discussion. Please make sure you subscribe to the Canadian Footy Fan Channel, smash the like button, give your thoughts, opinions, and any feedback in the comment section or live chat. All support is greatly appreciated. Today's topics will include the Canadian men's national team World Cup squad announcement reaction, the Canada men's national team friendly versus Bahrain review, the friendly against Japan preview, and then we're going to look at some of the goals and expectations for that friendly against Japan. But I won't be doing this alone. I am joined by Jordan, and later I'll be joined by Paul. So let me bring them onto the screen. How are you doing today, Jordan?
Honestly, today is selection day, and it was really exciting to see how TSN was able to produce it, and I can't wait to talk more about the squad.
Yeah, I was actually glad TSN did something for it. I'll be honest, I was kind of expecting it just to be announced on Twitter or something like that, but they did a full hour-long show, which I was a little bit shocked about, but I was rather glad that they did do it. So, Jordan, let's jump right into it. Give me your thoughts
Right.
on the squad announcement. Were there anybody you were shocked that was picked? Do you feel like anybody was omitted? Give me your thoughts.
Honestly, the only real omission here was probably Daniel Henry, and given how I personally feel about that, to be honest with you, it is what I expected to be, and I think we just wanted to make sure like the guys that got us here were here, and they were rewarded for the time that they put in 2021 getting us to this point. So honestly, if anybody that followed John Herman up to this point, everybody should know that this is realistically the type of squad he was going to pick.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I agree with you 100%. There was no shock for me. I'll bring up the squad on the screen right here. So I'll go through it quickly. So we got goalkeepers. We got Boyan, St. Clair, and Pantemis. Obviously, with the injury to Crepeau during the MLS Cup final, and he broke his leg, he won't be going to the World Cup, so he was not included. The defenders that are going are Adekubi, Waterman, Johnston, Larea, Miller, Victoria and Cornelius. So obviously, Henry was injured in the warm-up for the friendly against Bahrain, so he won't be going as a player, but it does sound like John Herdman is still taking Henry as a part of his coaching squad. And then obviously Kennedy is not going because he sustained a shoulder injury and he'll be out for quite some time. The midfielders are Fraser, Kone, Kay, Witherspoon, Osorio, Hutchinson, Eustachio, and Piet. And then the forwards we have Miller, Cavallini, Ugbo, Buchanan, David Larin, Davies, and Hoylett. Like you said, there isn't really any surprises. I guess the only surprise would be Fraser was picked as the replacement for Daniil Henry, if that's what I assume that's what what happened, that Henry was going to go instead of Fraser, and Waterman was going to go to the World Cup as well. But yeah, I don't have any shocks or surprises. In my predicted lineup, I had this minus Fraser, and then I had Bremen. Obviously, Herdman decided to go with more midfielders than forwards, and it's understandable because of Osorio returning from injury, Hutchinson returning from injury, Kay returning from injury, and being in poor form. So it does make sense to me that Liam Fraser was picked. What do you think with regards to game time with the squad? Do you feel like it's only going to be a select few players that play, and we're going to have a lot of players that are not going to see the field at all? Or do you think Herdman's going to rotate quite a bit in the upcoming World Cup?
Honestly, I think it all comes down to the Belgian game, because if we can make a good showing and get a result, then we'll have a better idea of how he's going to line up the squad for the rest of the time. In general, I think when it comes to Liam Fraser, I was not surprised at all because of the work he was doing against A, the United States, and B, that amazing pass to Jonathan David in the game against Honduras. So Herdman gave himself more flexibility than we originally had by adding in Liam Fraser, and he trusts him. So if anything breaks down, he'll be more than happy to bring Liam Fraser onto the field to be able to make a play or two. So overall, when it comes to potentially having players come in, I see 15 players at most making it on in a game by game basis.
Hey, Paul, how you doing today?
I'm good, Chris. How are you?
I'm excellent. Paul, what's your reaction to the squad? I have it up on the screen if you want to have a look. But what's your thoughts? What's your reaction?
Yeah, I don't think there's really any surprises. I think we kind of know how John Herdman sort of thinks throughout this long qualifier in comparison to other countries where they didn't really have this long qualifiers to qualify for the World Cup. So we had an idea in John's head of who he really wanted. Not sure if you guys caught the interview at the end where TSN asked him about specifically Arfield and Henry. I don't know if you guys caught. Did you catch that at the end?
Yeah,
I did.
You didn't? So even with that, you kind of caught even more insight. And he spoke again about the brotherhood. And for people that probably thought, okay, the brotherhood was just another saying, you actually really got to hear him really say, no, what, these guys were with us. And that's part of the reason why, and sorry, not to bring it, why Arfield didn't actually make it, even though for, argument's sake, he's probably the second best midfielder for Canada. But why he actually didn't make the roster, because they're more speaking about the brotherhood. So even with that, you see the only person here that probably is a surprise, I would probably possibly say, is Waterman coming on later. But also too, with him playing alongside Johnson and Miller, I think that also gave him an edge to be a part of the squad. Even though, some might argue, once again, he spoke highly of Henry. And I think today, for me, when he spoke highly of Henry again, as much as my biases and my personal opinion on how I feel he plays on the field, I think it made it kind of, to be honest with you, solidified with me the importance of how he views Henry and the team views Henry in comparison to maybe how some fans view him. And I'll be honest with you, I felt a little bit, it's kind of weird. It kind of pulled out my heartstring a little bit. I felt a little bit sad for him for now, which is so weird because I'm a person on Twitter that's like, no, Henry. Yeah. So that's probably the only surprise for me outside of everything else. I knew they were going to stack up the midfield. So, Jordan, I just heard you speak about Fraser. Yeah, that's the same thing. I kind of knew when they brought him into Bahrain that there's more than likely a chance that he would actually play.
There's no way you could bring him in. There's no way you're bringing Liam Fraser unless you almost basically guarantee him the World Cup.
Right. Yeah. But I also wonder if he knew he had to attend the camp as well. Like, he did everything he could to get away from his club. And if we're being honest, his club level isn't the greatest. So is he really going to demonstrate to Herdman that he deserves to be in the squad playing for his club or attending this camp? So considering he was the only European player to join, even though his team was playing games, even though he is a starter for his team, he must have pulled some strings to attend the camp.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
Mind you, a lot of the reason I Herdman even brought him into the camp in the first place is because of his performances in the previous cycle, right? So there and then.
To me, I don't know, Fraser for me has always played better for Canada than he has for his club teams. If we're being honest, like, yes, he didn't.
Toronto FC never gave him a chance.
Well, he didn't really give it a chance, but neither did Columbus when he was there, and there must be a reason for that. And then he ends up in the second Belgium division, which is not a great level of football, if we're being honest. Like, it's closer, I think, to probably the Canadian Premier League than it is to MLS in terms of standards. So, like, it's not the best standard, but he definitely does perform for Canada. I like you said, that assist he had, it was a beautiful assist, and he always performs for Canada. So I'm not going to knock him. He needs to play at a higher level, though. So hopefully, I don't think he's going to play at this World Cup. As Jordan said, only 15, 16 players, in my opinion, are going to see the field. A lot of people, a lot of players are going as glorified tourists and the cheer squad, which is perfectly fine.
Bringing the vibes.
But bringing the vibes. And that's why Henry is still going, because he's important to that locker room. And to be honest, I think we all need to move on from our field now. I know I've been pushing everybody to move on for a while, but I think this is the final nail in the coffin with regards to our field. Herdman once again touched on. I will say this about Herdman. He says things in the most polite way possible, because he could have just come out and just reamed our field, but in the nicest way possible. He basically said our field wasn't interested in playing for Canada anymore. He felt it was a waste of time, and then he decided not to come to the early World Cup qualifiers, and he didn't want to come to the Gold Cup. And then we built the squad, and he just wasn't part of it. So I can't blame Herdman for not bringing him in, especially with how bad the locker room was before Herdman came in. We've all heard the stories of how dysfunctional the men's locker room was for the national team.
Right.
So, he touched on it. He touched on it in The Athletic last year, when right after the Mexico game, right? And he was saying how Hardfield was saying, "Yo, the separation, how the Scotsmen were all here, all the Caribbean people were here. This is
South
how
American-based players were there."
Yeah.
And Herdman's like, "Oh, I want none of that."
I think that's why probably Daniil really stepped up in bringing everybody together.
Yes.
And I know Osorio apparently was part of that as well, bringing in the South American and Spanish-speaking players. I know Atiba was big in that. Hoylett was big in that. So it's probably why we don't see some of those players that we used to, because maybe that's just not how they operate. The likes are, but a lot of them, their level has also dropped off as well. When you look at like Fraser Aird, now he's playing in the Canadian Premier League, and players like that. Jordan, is there any, Paul, is there any player you felt really missed out on going that should have gone?
Well, just based on I probably would say Theo, but I find it kind of hard. I'm trying to juggle. I know Jordan, it's really Chris and I on this one, but I find it hard. I understand with the injury, they needed another midfielder. Also with Theo playing the left wing, with Davies, the left winger and a free, also playing the free role. Yeah. And then you have Liam Miller. I could see Herdman wanting Theo to get some more experience at his club, to get more maturity, and I use that term loosely, to then be able to grow. I think he is the future. I think he will play. I've heard, conversations where, at Blackpool, seeing that the manager has been playing a role in getting him really to be more mature and to play more discipline on both ends of the field. So that was probably the only person that I maybe would say missed out. It would have been nice to kind of see him with this team, because I think he is a part of the brotherhood.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I think we could probably extend this brotherhood to maybe 30 players, maybe even 35. There's quite a few players involved in our World Cup qualifying. Like I'll quickly exit out of this. Oh, well, let me exit out. Like I've got this as my background, and this is all the players that were involved in World Cup qualifying. So there was a fair number. Not everybody played, but there's a fair number of players that I think, if there was injuries, like for example, I thought instead of Fraser going, Brim would go. I would have preferred Corbianu to go, but I knew from what I can tell, Herdman seems to prefer Brim a little bit more than Corbianu, and Brim does start for his team every game and has been playing well. Yes, it is at a bit of a lower level in the Dutch second division. But I think Corbianu, I agree with you, Corbianu was one for the future. In my opinion, he's my star boy. I know people, and then Kone is my second star boy, and somebody who we will touch on later, and I need to give him not another apology, but reaffirm my apology to him a little bit later on. But yeah, there's a lot of players that are involved in the brotherhood. I think we're in a good spot right now with regards to the squad. it's going to be, like I said, with an Arfield, I think he's done. He's retired, and it's done. He's not coming back for the Gold Cup. He's not coming back for Nations League. It's done.
No.
And it's unfortunate because you could argue, well, I don't think he definitely would.
He was
in our
ready.
starting 11. He's in our starting 11, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Easily.
Like
Easily.
I know I rate Osorio, but I know Arfield is better than him. Even if it's slight, even though it might be slight, and even though it long term, obviously Arfield is, I think, 5 years older than Osorio. Right now, I think Arfield would be starting for us in our midfield. So
he was the captain after Atiba.
He was the captain, but you see that I think that made it even worse that he didn't want to come up. He didn't want to be part of the team anymore, and then it made it even worse because he was the person that was going to lead us. And I think Atiba would always be the captain, but he would have been the vice captain. But then, he didn't want to be a part of the team anymore. He didn't think it was worth it to him. Yes, he had other stuff going on, but when your country calls, if you don't accept, you've got to take the repercussions of that.
Well, here's the thing, though.
Oh, sorry. I'll let you go.
Go ahead, Jordan.
Here's the thing, though. He also probably had some outside pressure from his club team, Rangers.
100%.
Because what was his name? That British guy, that midfielder, whoever he is.
Steven Gerrard.
Yeah, that guy.
Slippy G. He slipped out of Aston Villa.
Exactly. Yeah, he was saying how Scott Arfield played his last game for Canada way back when, and it wasn't exclusive to Scott Arfield. There was other players that were playing internationally that were being forced into early retirement. So as much as we can say Arfield didn't do enough to try and make his way there, he also had those kind of pressures. Because at the end of the day, these club teams are going to say, "Oh, this is what butters your bread." This is what butters your bread at the end of the day. Playing for a national team is just dessert. That's what these managers are going with a standby at. But here's another thing. When they say that, but then Scotland comes up for already their players, they're more than happy to release them. I'm like, you can't have it both ways.
It's the same in every league. It's like the same in the English Premier League, where if you play for England, oh yes, you got to go. You play for a smaller nation, like I know, for example, Jamaica has had, but that's not just in the Premier League. That's in the English pyramid, where if you want to play for anybody like Jamaica or Barbados or anything like that, or Trinidad and Tobago, there's problems. There's always, but you got a slight niggle here. Oh, you got a bruise there. Your toe is itchy. Oh, you can't go. Like, there's always something, except for the country that the club is in. And then it's like, oh, yes, you got to go. Your foot is broken. No, go. Unfortunately, that's how international football works. And I think with Canada, at the time when Arfield made his decision, it's just we weren't at the high enough level where people would take us seriously. I think now that will change. I don't think we'll have an Arfield situation going forward unless our national program goes back to where it was. But yeah, it's unfortunate. Paul, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I was going to say something. I was looking back because I was kind of trying to figure out, okay, why would Arfield not want to play, right? I think there's a combination of two things. I think number one, Herdman coming on and not necessarily, there were doubters. Like I saw on Twitter, a lot of people now who are like on the Herdman.
I was one of them. I'll put my hands up. I'll put my hands up.
A lot of people were like, "Oh my gosh, look at!" And I was following the women, and I was like, "No, this guy." Like I saw the mentality that even the women's team was not where it was, and how he brought the women's team. I'm like, I feel like he could do the same on the men's side. Tactically, I wasn't too sure. But I felt from a motivation, from a leadership standpoint, that he could actually do it. And secondly, I was watching an old game on YouTube, and I saw that Arfield playing against Honduras. I think in 2016 or 17. I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot that he was playing so long with the team. So I could also understand, in fairness, that him playing so long and just. We lost to Honduras. I forgot who was playing on that team. I think
If
the
we're
only
talking about 2016, 2017, there was a high probability of having 10 center backs surrounded by Scott Arfield because of who the coach was.
Yeah.
So you had
don't
like
remind me of
Ricketts.
Benito Floro.
Benito
Jeez.
Floro and Zambrano was
Brano.
the one. Yeah, was
Victor
the other one that
Zambrano.
coached. And think about it, like it was
Octavio
for me,
Zambrano, sorry.
Yeah. For those coaches that we had, I could understand where he probably was like, I'm gonna have to go through this again. So I'm not saying it was right, but I could understand because at the time Hoylett wasn't on it. A lot of the players weren't on the team, right? And then think about it, that first Gold Cup that Herman took us to, when everybody was now like, okay, we're gonna do well, and we lost 3-2 to Haiti, and then doubt started creeping in again. So I feel like with that doubt, I think he probably was like, why am I gonna go all these qualifiers, Haiti and all these places to travel? And there's a lot of travel. There's a lot of sacrifice to travel.
It is.
Like the travel here in CONCACAF is like, a lot of times people are like, oh, CONCACAF. I'm like, just to travel alone in comparison to Europe, playing Europe, is hectic. So I could see why he was, not willing, but I think it pissed off a lot of people, because I remember when Wheeler tweeted out, oh yeah, Arfield's going to come. And right below that, Hoylett put a cap. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, there is more to it than we're seeing. And from then I was like trying to dig to see. And then I knew, I think it pissed off a lot of those guys. I mean, in fairness, Hoylett really came on later on after Arfield, right? But I also get it, where it was just like...
Well, so did Arfield. So did Arfield, right?
He did.
He only joined in his mid-20s when it was clear to him Scotland wasn't going to call him up.
Right, when Scotland wasn't going to qualify. So, sorry, not to prolong this Arfield, but I think it's bittersweet, but we got to move on. But I think what's good now is that we see the rise of these midfielders that we're having now. So as much as, we're kind of, sad that he would have been in the starting 11, we probably would have played a three midfield player. I think that would have been really... I would have loved to see Eustáquio, him, and Atiba in the midfield, but it is what it is. And as you said, and time to move on to other midfielders that we do have that I think could do a decent job.
Okay. Well, I think this is a good point to move on. So we'll move on to the review between the men's national team versus Bahrain friendly, which was a rather disappointing result and a rather awful performance, but we'll discuss it in more detail. So, and I'm not overly upset with it for a few reasons, but we'll get to those shortly. I'll start off with a bit of a recap. So the lineup was Dane Sinclair in goal. Obviously he started. I assume Crepeau would have started, but with the injury, obviously he didn't. We then had we played the 3-box-4-1 formation. 5-box-4-1 formation. My bad. At left center back we had Kamal Miller. At central center back we had Joel Waterman, who started ahead of Henry, who was, as I mentioned earlier, got injured in the warm-up for the game and has been ruled out for the squad as a player, but is still going as part of the coaching staff. We had Alistair Johnston at right center back. Our wing backs were Raheem Edwards and Richie Larea. We played a midfield box at the base of it was KMPet, and ahead of them was Osorio and Kone. And then we had Cavallini up top. So how the game went, I believe Kone opened. Yes, Kone did open the scoring in the 6th minute after taking a brilliant touch from a long ball from Kamal Miller. He then beat his defender and then smashed the ball into the back of the net. Unfortunately, Bahrain equalized soon after in the 14th minute after basically a calamity of mistakes between Mark Anthony Kaye and Joel Waterman, who we will touch further on later on. In the 65th minute, we gave away a penalty, Alistair Johnston with a poor challenge on the edge of the box, but it was just inside the box. And then they converted the penalty. And then in the 81st minute, Zachary Broguillard whips in a ball into the box. I believe Cavallini was attempting to control the ball, and then it deflected off the defender and went into the back of the net. Some people are crediting it as a Cavallini goal, but to be honest, it has to be an own goal. Cavallini wasn't even attempting to shoot. He was just attempting to control the ball. Some other opportunities that Canada had in the game. There was a cross early on from Osorio to Cavallini that looked onside in my opinion, but was ruled offside. And obviously there was no VAR at this game. That was disallowed. Kone had, well, if we're being honest, he missed an absolute sitter. Raheem Edwards whipped in the ball. Kone was about 4 yards out. It was an open net. The defender wasn't really tight to him, and he just mistimed his header, and it went wide. Statistically, Canada dominated the ball, having 62% possession compared to Bahrain's 38%. Both teams had 7 shots on target, 7 shots in total. Bahrain had more on target with 4 compared to Canada's 2. Some other passes, Canada had a lot more completed passes with 344 with an 88% accuracy compared to Bahrain's 183 and 75% accuracy. So basically, Canada just dominated the ball in the middle third, in my opinion. But when it came to the final third, not much was going on, unfortunately. Give me your reaction to the game, Paul, as an overview.
The game, well, first off, and I know somebody, I think Afrikaans was the one that actually said to me, I shouldn't have said it, but I looked at the pitch even before they came on the field, and I was like, oh my gosh.
You know what it reminded me of? The Jamaican cow patch that we played on. That's what it reminded me of.
It was. I looked at it, I was like, okay, Bahrain, they're a rich country.
I was expecting the Sultans to put a little bit more money into this. Like, what?
Yeah, exactly.
No, I think it was on purpose, to be honest. They knew they couldn't play against us, so they were like, let the goats on the field before the game, and then maybe it'll even the game out. Like, I don't know. Like, or maybe the camels or something. I don't know what they got in Bahrain.
Be careful when you put in those hard tackles, man. You don't know if it's mud or something else.
But
I think that threw off the players. You could tell, obviously, the style of play they want to do in comparison to the ball was just bouncy. It was all over the place. So I couldn't really necessarily even assess, to be honest with you. I know some people were like, okay, Waterman, to control the ball. But to be honest with you, I'm not even sure if he's played on this type of surface before, right? Because he hasn't really traveled on Honduras with us. Pardon? Yeah, he didn't go Honduras with us. He did travel. So I'm just like, I felt like for him, outside of that, I just wanted to mention that first. I know a lot of people, he did look nervous.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Canadian Premier League, it's all artificial turfs,
for
what I'm aware. Right. And then in MLS, I will say this about MLS, the standard of pitch is fairly high unless it's artificial, and there's some awful artificial pitches in MLS. But that, I think, was an all-grass pitch, or must have been, because there's no way an artificial turf would look like that. But yeah, it was brutal.
Oh my gosh, it was so horrible. So when I saw that, I'm like, okay, how am I are you really gonna assess the game? But one I wanted to see is the rust. So I wanted to see from a rust perspective how they'd actually play, how to be cohesive, especially with a lot of MLS players, some people not actually gonna be playing in the World Cup. For me, I would say one takeaway for sure, I'm still nervous about the defense. I was nervous before starting World Cup qualifier. They helped to quelch that a bit for me, the way they played. And I think Herman did a really good job tactically that allowed us to really hide that. But my gosh, the defense didn't look, I'm really concerned. As much as they've had a meteoric rise, I'm still concerned, and I know maybe this is blasphemy, I'm still concerned about Johnson and Miller. Miller with the turns, because we saw it in I think it was the Honduras game where he got turned out and the guy beat him. I think even the Panama goal, like that's something that I've consistently seen. Even in the last game that CF Montreal played where they lost, he got turned out again. I don't know if it's something that, I'm not sure if they probably need to have the tape to make him realize. I don't know if it's just something that it's just going to be a habit, but he always get beat on the turn. Johnston,
mind you.
No, go ahead.
Mind you, he was able to cover for Joel Waterman a few times because Joel Waterman got cooked like at least 2 different occasions.
Yeah,
The first
Joel
time
Waterman
that-
had an absolute stinker. If we're being honest, it was a brutal debut. It was awful.
Nerves.
It's just, I'm not like, I wanted him to do well, and we need
Right.
him to do well.
We-
As you pointed out, we clearly need center back depth. But he cannot, if he has to play in the World Cup, he cannot play like that at all. Like, if it was a competitive match, I think he would have been subbed off at halftime.
Oh,
Like,
absolutely.
it was poor. Obviously, it's his debut. He's nervous. It's a poor pitch. He needs more chances. He is definitely high up in our center back depth, but it was not a good game. But go ahead, Jordan.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, like
Oh yeah, go ahead, Jordan.
Kamal Miller does a good job at, like, you know, covering certain mistakes
Yes.
from the other field, right? And Raheem Edwards, as good as he is, he sometimes pulls Lauricio Larrea where he leaves his center back wide open to one-on-ones.
Mhm.
And
Right.
I think because he plays for LA Galaxy, where he plays with different center backs, he's not used to the fact that, you know what, he has to stay home a little bit more. So for Kamal Miller to succeed, he has to make sure, like, you know, he has a left back that's beside him that's more defensively responsible. And when he was with Anakubi, that's where Kamal Miller shines, right? Joel Waterman.
Yeah.
Give me 1 second.
Yeah.
I get it. It was his first game, but he was playing with at least 4 or 5 players that he plays with on a regular basis. He was
And against Bahrain. It's against
the whole
Bahrain.
back line. He was playing off-brand Qatar. He was playing beside Alistair Johnson and Kamal Miller, and with Piet right in front of him. When he made that pass, I don't know if it's between, like, the fact that it was a little bit too far ahead of him, or Kay was just unsure of his footing because of the pitch.
Yeah.
But right there and then, that killed Canada's momentum.
Yeah, it did.
And because the first 15 minutes, you can make your argument Canada was playing reasonably well.
I agree.
And the first goal that was set up by Kone was because Kamal Miller saw Kone going down, and he beamed that pass right above right above Bahrain, and Kone just did the rest. He just did the business. But, like, as I said, this was a game for him to try and take a bull by the horns, and he ended up just having us leaving with more questions and answers. And I don't know what we can do now, because remember one more thing: Henry was originally going to be the captain of the team before he got injured.
Yeah.
Right.
So
yes.
we
Henry
saw
was-
just how highly
Henry-
how highly Herdman rates him. And at the end of the day, for better or for worse, at least we know what we are going to get from Daniel Henry. And those 2 or 3 plays that if Henry was there, they probably wouldn't have been a different result. And I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. And Henry's useful too. I don't think Henry would have seen the field much at the World Cup, but the last 10 minutes, if you need somebody to rough up Lukaku or rough up somebody, you put him out there and play him in a free roll defense role where he just roams around kicking people and getting some tackles in and getting stuck in like a DM,
Just like what he did the ice tech.
like an extra DM, but just somewhere in the back line somewhere. I don't know. But yeah, but like Paul said earlier, I don't rate Henry that highly, and I'll be honest. I think he'll be playing in the Canadian Premier League next season, if we're being honest. And I don't even think he would even start for some of them, especially Forge.
He could start over Ashton or Leon.
And some
for being honest.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know you cut out.
Oh, I did cut out. Well, and
Yeah,
I'm
I
back.
saw that he
There
cut.
we-
Yeah, I saw that he did.
Yeah, I cut out and I'm back. Perfect. If I cut out, just to keep the show going, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you guys have anything else to touch? Well, we've discussed the negatives. What about, we briefly touched him, and what about Mark Anthony Kay? I wanted to talk about him because he's really had a poor year. Not for clubs, multiple, because he was poor for Colorado as well. And I think that was part of why Colorado kind of moved him on. He was poor for TFC, and he's been poor for Canada as well this year. He was partially at fault for the first goal, in my opinion. Although Waterman clearly made 2 mistakes in that first goal, one with the pass being not at the player on an awful pitch, but then also he got spun as the play was building up, and he got spun badly, and the guy really didn't even do much. He just kind of like moved the ball, and then down went Waterman. But Mark Anthony Kaye, when receiving that pass, should have been stepping forward to receive it. And the fact that he was backtracking tells me he's not confident at all. So, Paul, tell me, what are your thoughts about Mark Anthony Kaye? I don't think he's going to play much at the World Cup, if at all. And next year, he may even fall out of the squad entirely if he doesn't find his form again. And it's an important year for Canada next year. We have the Gold Cup, where it's not a FIFA window, so we may rely on MLS players. We have the Nations League, where there's injuries that can happen. It's an important year for his club as well. TFC are going to look to make the playoffs. Give me your thoughts on Mark Anthony Kaye, Paul.
So the interesting thing is that even from the beginning of the World Cup qualifier, I don't know if you guys remember, Mark Anthony Kaye wasn't necessarily in the starting 11. He was out of favor.
That was because Atiba came back.
Yeah, I think there was one good game, and I can't remember if it was the Cayman Islands, but one good game that he had, and I think everybody was like, okay. For me personally speaking, I've always had an issue with Mark Anthony Kaye. As a midfielder, especially in Herman's system, you need to know how to play both ends. I find that if his passes are not accurate, he is null. Like, for me personally, I don't see anything else that he brings value to. When his passes are on point, yes. And the unfortunate thing, he's a tall midfielder, so he should be able, like Atiba, he should be that Atiba. I'm not saying exactly, but along with his passing, be able to defend well. And he just doesn't do that well. And Colorado, he wasn't doing well. I think he just, I don't know, it was with Bob Bradley that he was doing well. And after that, it just, to me, felt like it was going a downward spiral. And this year has been a total disaster, I personally feel, for him outside of injuries. I know some people might say, okay, it's the injuries. I don't think it's the injuries. I think there's a skill set that is lacking, and that if he does not bring that on the pitch, then it definitely, he's null and void. Like you look at Ozil, sorry, I hate to jump quickly, but you look at Ozil. Ozil could play so many different areas in the midfield. Mm-hmm. Like, that's the versatility that you need. Eustáquio could do the same. Atiba could do the same. Kone, as much as he's still dynamic going forward, he's so dynamic going forward that he makes up for the lack of defense. And you could see he's growing into it. We could kind of see, but he makes up for it. Mark Anthony Kaye, I'm sorry. There is, for me, and I think I told you this, Chris, I think next year, definitely, I'm not sure he's going to make the squad, or he's going to be on like thread to make the squad next year if he continues in this form. I don't think he's going to get on the pitch unless there's an injury. I'll probably even go as far as to say maybe even Fraser might get on before him. And the reason I see Jordan, and here why, because think about it, we're the underdogs in 3 games. Mark Anthony Kaye doesn't bring anything on the defensive end. Liam Miller does. And Liam Fraser, does. And also Liam Fraser can pass out the back. So the one thing that Mark Anthony Kaye can do good, Liam Fraser we know can do it, but also could defend. So I think that in the depth chart, I could see him in these 3 World Cup qualifiers getting ahead of Mark Anthony Kaye.
Let's touch on another midfielder. And then I'll get your opinion. You can touch on Kaye as well, but I'm going to come to you, Jordan. Give me your thoughts on the performance from Kone, and has he, like, in my opinion, he has for sure, but has he risen as that top 4 Canadian midfielders where we have Osorio, Eustáquio, Atiba, and then is that 4th person now Kone? I think before you could make an argument it was Kaye or Piet. And although Piet plays a very different role to the other 2, is that 4th player Kone? And his goal, just tell me about his goal, his performance. Just give me your thoughts there.
All right, let's first talk about the goal. That was a piece of art. Like, the way he took that first touch and just parted the Red Sea, and he left himself wide open, and he was able to dictate where he wanted to place the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Even though the ball was bouncing, but he had perfect control of what he was going to do, and he just flicked it over for his first national team goal. And I think that was a really good way to recover from his Panama game that he had. Being his first game he started since the Panama game, right? Because we've seen how he had nerves in the past, and being inaccurate with his passing and having to be subbed off in the 45th minute. But this game should instill a lot of confidence going forward with what Kone will bring to the table. And overall, I do think Kone will have the potential to become fourth, maybe even the third best midfielder if he has a good showing in the World Cup. Because what Kone has, he has youth and he has more explosiveness. Osorio has more experience, and he knows what he can do, and he knows what he's all about. But there are certain games when there's high-profile matches where Osorio can be a little invisible because he's just doing what he can to keep everything, from falling apart. But when it comes to Kone now, it doesn't matter. He's gonna do what he can to make it to do something dynamic to get the team going. So overall, I think Kone does have the potential to be at number 4 at the very least.
Okay. And you touched on the next person I wanted to bring up was Jonathan Osorio. This was his first game back returning from post-concussion syndrome. To be honest, out of all the players that started today, he had the biggest excuse of dropping an absolute poor performance. But in my opinion, he was actually man of the match. Obviously, Kone could also have been man of the match and they were the only 2 players that really impressed in the game. If we're being honest, everybody else was mediocre at best or poor.
Raheem Adams was terrible.
Raheem, well, he was terrible, and then he had that cross, and then he went back to being terrible again.
He had touches where he couldn't control the ball in time. It's like it wasn't at the level where it's needed to be.
I wonder if that's also the pitch, because Richie Larea had the same problem as well, and they're both dribblers, and I think on that pitch, trying to dribble was a nightmare. I think it was a game where you had to just receive the ball and play simple passes. Unfortunately, or else it just went sideways if you held onto the ball for too long. But Paul, are you still? Oh yeah, you're still there. So Paul, give me your thoughts on Osorio's performance. Were you surprised by how good he looked? Do you think he's asking some questions to be included in the starting lineup?
You know what? I was actually surprised because just based on the injury, and it was actually, we were looking on Twitter, Adam, and he had posted when we didn't see any pictures initially of him. So we were even wondering, is he healthy enough even to be training, or is he having some setback? That was funny. I mean,
I remember that.
Yeah, I'll be honest here, I was concerned just based on the injury and how long he was out.
The Jonathan Osorio watch, there was people freaking out.
And
then TFC posted the picture. Oh no!
So don't worry, he's here.
Yeah. I think
don't worry, he's
alive.
He's alive.
But yeah, because I feel like this year, as much as the contract year, he was very dynamic before that injury. He was playing well. He's very versatile, and you could see that even in this match in Bahrain, where his versatility, his leadership showed. I was actually impressed because I thought he would have some rust. I thought it would take time for him to grow into the game, but just shows you the level of number 1 IQ. And as much as people might knock, I've seen people, across the country outside of TFC supporters that sometimes might knock Ozo, whether, he doesn't have the skill set or blah, blah. And when you see him, I think what he does, Jordan, and to his fault, what you just said is, he knows how to play his role. So at TFC, for example, he knows he has to be that dynamic midfielder and score goals, and he does it, right? With the Canadian team, you could tell he knows where he has to play the role against Mexico. He knew he had to be that person because Davies was playing that free role, so he had to be that scorer, and he scored. And that's what I like about him, but it also could be at fault from what you said, because there's times if he knows his role, he stays within that role just based on his IQ and knows, okay, Herman has a game plan. This is what I need to do. I'm going to just do this because this is what they're asking me to do, instead of sometimes as TFC knowing that, you know what, I need to do so much more, so I'm going to actually do that. But I actually really rate Ozo. as much as I said earlier in his career, I was even knocking him on I need to see more goals. But now realizing and understanding his maturity, I realize that he's always playing within what the coaches want him to play. Sorry, Jordan. I know you're going to say something there.
Go ahead, Jordan.
Oh no, you literally said what I was about to say, so we're good.
So,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say, in a recent interview, Jonathan David was asked, "Who is the Canadian men's national team player with the most intelligence?" And he said the player with the most footballing intelligence by far is Jonathan Osorio, which shocked me because we have Atiba, we have Eustachio, although you have stars like Alphonso Davies. He could have mentioned himself, but he's not the type of person to do that. He mentioned Jonathan Osorio. So I think, like you said there, Paul, he never makes it about himself unless it's what the team requires.
Right.
And for Canada, he knows his role is to receive the ball and move it on as quickly as possible to one of the better players. And to me, that's why I think he has to be in contention to start for us, just because he's somebody in the midfield. As you touched on as well, Paul, he's not a 6, but he can play the 6, and he'll do his best at the 6. It's not his best position, but he'll do it. He'll play the 8, he'll play the 10, he'll play out wide. He's very flexible, and he'll do anything that the manager asks, and we know that he can fulfill those roles to an adequate level. So to me, and in the World Cup, where I think we may have to be flexible depending on the situation we are in the games, and depending how the games are going, he's a very useful player. Like I said at the start, it shocked me that he was so good. He had every reason to be poor.
He wanted this more than anybody else.
He really wanted to show that he is a baller and that he's here for a reason. Kone had an excellent game as well, and it actually might be between the two of them who starts if we play a midfield 3. It'll be interesting to see how John Herdman goes. But in my personal opinion, I would pick Osorio simply because I think overall right now he is a better player than Kone, as well as he's more flexible than Kone is right now, where Kone, I think, really has to play an 8 or 10 right now, where Osorio, if need be, he is solid defensively compared to Kone. One thing I want to touch on is something that Herdman said in his interview after the friendly was the biggest takeaway from this game was the importance of having this game and arranging this friendly and camp where the MLS players could get familiarized with each other, bring in some new faces as well to familiarize themselves with the Canadian program going forward, but also to get some rust off because we looked very, very rusty. A lot of the players did not look comfortable out there, whether that was the pitch, not playing in a couple of weeks, and even the Montreal players who played 2 extra weeks with 2 extra games, even they were rusty as all heck besides Kone. And Payet was okay, but with Payet, you know what you're getting. You're never going to get, especially in a game where we dominate the ball, Payet's not going to shine. He's going to do what he does. He's going to get the ball and he's going to pass it to somebody else, and that's fine. That's his role, right? His role is
he's a very definition of destroy.
Oh yeah, he's there to protect the back line, and to be honest, the back line didn't need much protecting except when it decided to explode and cause itself some problems with the penalty we gave away and then that first goal we gave away. But Jordan, I'm going to come to you. Does this show the importance that Canada arranges more camps, like before tournaments, especially in situations where either the European players are not playing or, in this case, the MLS players are not playing? Just an opportunity to bring more players in. Do you think it's something we must do going forward? I know in the past it's been a budgetary issue, but we're bringing in, 14 million from this World Cup? Surely some of that money can be set aside to arrange camps going forward, especially next year where we have the Gold Cup and Nations League going on.
When it comes to the money situation, I think we do have a little privy about what's going on back there, but we'll leave that alone. Mm-hmm. Overall, in general, when it comes to scheduling more friendlies in general, just adding more camps to get more familiar, it doesn't even need to start at the national team level. It has to start from way earlier, because never mind the fact that a bunch of players we could have gotten didn't come because, or they switched allegiances because they didn't feel Canadian enough, because we're not doing enough from early to get to the point where we can,
even from the youth level, we don't hold enough camps.
Right.
So,
No.
So like it has to start from the bottom and work our way up to the top.
Mm-hmm.
But I know the top is like the national team technically should be bringing the money to do this a lot more often. Mm-hmm. I just hope Canada doesn't shoot themselves in the foot from allowing themselves to have more of these opportunities, because it just shows how important it is to get more people on the same page to what we're going to do, because we want to make sure this is the norm, not the exception.
Mm-hmm.
And if we literally have two countries that are right beside us or right below us that are doing a lot of the things that we should have been doing. Mm-hmm. We literally have the example right there in our own confederation. And it's not like they're perfect, because United States pay-to-play system is stupid expensive. Zlatan can attest to that. Mexico, they stunt their growth because they don't want anybody to leave the country.
Mm-hmm. Right,
like,
yes.
Half of them could have gone to Spain and made a much huge name for themselves. But next thing you know, they're resting their hopes on a Canadian who plays in the second division, and they're mad about him not being selected. I'm like, this shouldn't be the case. You guys are like one of the top 5 leagues in the world. What are you guys doing? Canada, you guys, and that's beside the point. At least they're actually in a multi-million dollars making all this money, having a lot of camps. They're usually number 1 and number 2 coming out of this confederation, always going to the Olympics, always making it to the World Cups, and always going to the World Cup in general. This is the first time we went in 35 years. Yeah. And a lot of it, and we have all the groundwork there. We could have done this from time. And I know a lot of people are saying because hockey is number 1, but we're literally number 2 in participation. Mm-hmm. And it goes to show, like, a lot of it has to do with the mentality of the corporations, like, not seeing just how much of a cash cow it is. It's like everybody's waiting until 2026 to do something. And it shouldn't be the case. Like, it was literally blasphemous for Herdman to even talk about, we're going to make it to 2022. Yeah. It was literally until, like, it literally took us beating Mexico for everybody to be like, yo, let's get on this bandwagon now.
Right,
like,
absolutely.
We've seen what this potential can be. The Panama game, for instance. Once Alphonso Davies went and got the ball from like 50 miles away, comes and still gets the ball and scores. Next thing you know, Drake's there doing his thing, coming to the players. Why aren't we capitalizing on this?
Yeah, absolutely.
The exposure we need.
Well, a part of the problem is, and something we won't go into much at all today, is the CSB deal. Like, does Canada Soccer even have control over that sort of stuff? As announced with the new CIBC deal, there's a lot involved in it. It's not simply an easy thing to arrange a partnership with Canada Soccer right now. There's a bit of a process you have to go through, and it's like pyramid scheme. I know. And then, but like Herdman, he pushed for us to have a January camp in 2021, where, for example, Mitrovic accepted that call up, but then obviously it got cancelled because of COVID. But I know Herdman had to go digging under cushions to find money for that camp. We shouldn't, every January before a major tournament, whether it's youth or men's national team or women's national team, there has to be camps, especially for MLS or NWSL players. These players aren't playing. There's no reason why we can't hold a camp. Go down to, I know in Canada it's not ideal weather, but go down to Florida. There's stuff we can do. And like Herdman said and touched on, it was so important to have this camp so that players could wear off their rust and get more familiar, because essentially what would have happened is the Bahrain game would have essentially been the Japan game. So at least now we can work on what we did in the Bahrain game towards the Japan game and hopefully have a good game against Japan and then build up towards the World Cup from that. But let's move on to our preview for the Japan game. Paul, I'm going to come to you. What are you looking for in this game? What are you looking to see? Are you wanting Herdman to pretty much play just the players who are going to play in the World Cup and play his starting 11? Or do you want him to play 2 separate 11s, 1 45, 1 11, another 45, another 11? Or what are you looking for?
I think you have to start your 11 that you're starting against Belgium. I think that's very important. Um, just because it's helping to solidify, especially that the team hasn't played together since what was oh my gosh, the last window
Was in June, wasn't
was
it?
in June.
I believe
It
so.
seems so far away now. Like
No, did we?
wait,
We
hold
had
on. No,
Did we play in September? Did we play?
September?
Yeah, we
did
did. Yeah, we did.
Oh yeah,
We played
Uruguay, and
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh
Uruguay
my
and
god.
yeah, Qatar,
Uruguay
Yeah,
and
you're going
Qatar.
to
Qatar in September. Yeah.
Yeah. We remember we didn't have Atiba playing.
No.
So integrating, and Ozo wasn't there. Not saying
Yeah.
he's in the start 11, but I'm just saying there were some players that were missing. So I think it's important, especially Atiba not being there, is to really get your 11 to start to gel and to familiarize yourself again with what the tactics are going to be for Belgium, what you want to play. And the unfortunate thing is Davies most likely won't play in this Japan game. So you definitely need to be able to solidify. So I want us to be able to see continuity, be able to see people, more the MLS guys again, shaking off the rust. We know the European guys, but also the rust of being together as a brotherhood and playing together. Because if you notice, everybody's been playing a different role. Eustachio, as much as he's been tearing up in Porto, he's playing a different role than what he's been playing for Canada. So everybody coming back to their roles and being able to sort of understand what Herman wants to do. That's really one of the main things I want to see moving forward. And I want to see the formation, because I know I sent you, Chris, my formation, but I'm not certain that's really my starting 11.
Yeah, that's okay.
But to be honest with you, I don't know. And something that we've touched on before, I'm not sure if in these games we're going to need two strikers. I think we need one striker.
I agree.
Especially Belgium, but especially against Croatia, because we know Croatia's midfield is probably one of the top in the world. Like, I'll probably say top 3 in the world. So we know what Modric he could do, even though he's 38, 39, I think he is.
I think 38. I think
38, I think he is.
I think so.
Yeah, no, we know what he could do. So you're gonna need. That's really what I want to be able to also see how the midfield works. Definitely. So I want to see his 11, what formation he's gonna play, and how he's gonna set up in the midfield. And I think we do need three midfielders for every game. Yeah, we don't need Laren. Sorry, as much as he's the most goal scorer in the World Cup qualifier, yada yada.
Yeah. Yeah, he hasn't been on form either, right? And he's barely playing for his club.
Yeah.
For a while, I thought, well, maybe we play one striker but move David on the wing, because at the start of the season for Lille, he was playing on the right wing a little bit. But ever since maybe the start of the European season, I've moved away from that. And I agree with you. We have to stack the midfield as best we can. Especially in the first 2 games, where we're going to be playing against some excellent midfielders, and a lot of games, especially in international football, where there is a lack of familiarity, the games are lost in midfield. So whoever dominates the midfield typically is more successful. I think this World Cup is going to be fairly interesting because there's an extreme lack of preparation for teams before the World Cup.
Right.
So it's not just going to be a Canada issue, even though we have issues with players not playing regularly. It's not like when the World Cup is in the summer where teams have 3 weeks, 2 weeks camps before, and they play multiple friendlies, sometimes 2 to 3 friendlies. A lot of nations are playing one friendly, and the players are coming in a week before the World Cup starts. So I think it might be poor quality at this World Cup, if I'm being honest, but maybe that'll benefit Canada as well, with us being able to hold a little bit of an early camp and bring some of our tougher competition maybe towards us, rather than us having to play up to them. Let's look at some of our lineup predictions. And Jordan, I'm going to come to yours first. Let me bring it up onto the screen. Oh, there we go. Magic. So Jordan, you want to walk us through your starting 11 and just a brief summary, why you think you want to go with something like this?
All right. This starting 11 for Japan, I want to make sure we capitalize on our flexibility, because more or less, we have to take advantage of of what we do have take advantage of what we do have when it comes to using our wings over our midfield, because a lot with what we just talked about, we're not going to win the midfield battle more times than not. The best we can do is literally try to hold the midfield to the point where it doesn't absolutely kill us. So with that being said, I decided to go with a 4-3-3, and with Adekubi on the left side being old reliable, having Kamal Miller there. He is an all-star for CF Montreal, and hopefully no injury concerns, because I heard he was injured in that Bahrain game. He'll be most likely starter. Steve Victoria, he's the third captain of the team, and he knows what he does. He knows what he brings to the table, and he towers over everybody in Japan, so we won't have to worry about. Yeah, he's exactly. And Alistair Johnston, All-Star Johnson, I like to call him. He has been doing a much better job at being able to put crosses into the box, as when Wilfred Nazi put him in as a right wing back, as a matter of fact, and he's been taking full advantage of that, expanding his game. So I want to see more of that in this lineup. Hutchinson being there at the base, perfect role for him. Be able to snuff out any fires that may
octopus.
happen. Exactly. Daddy long legs. But so him being there is a perfect role for him, because his vision is probably second to none on the team, although we might make an argument for that. But being able to make that first pass out of the back line into the second third, it'll be important for him to be there. Eustachio, my goodness, he took Porto by storm. He is crazy, and I think the shackles are going to come off this World Cup. And I want to see if, with the expanded roles and not as a now proper number 8, what else he can do, because he's been playing the 6 for us for the longest time, being the base of the midfield. Now I don't think he needs to do that anymore, because I think he improved his game to the point where he can offer a little bit more in the passing game and being able to more dictate the play. So I want him there. Osorio, if you want a lockpick merchant, he's your guy. He's going to make sure everything keeps flowing and be able to break down that back line, which will help out Tajan Buchanan, who will just step over everybody 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times per game. Whether he'll be successful at it, that remains to be seen, but he'll do a job. And Jonathan David, he has had a renaissance at Lille. He is a goal machine, and he's been an upstream ever since he went from being a number 10 at the beginning of the season to being back to being a striker now. So overall, I think him being at the center of the trio will be perfect for him, because not only that, he can be a false 9. Mm-hmm. He's not going to be a target man. He can be a nice false 9 and be able to have Buchanan and Davey just run up ahead of him, because his vision is underrated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, his vision's underrated, because when he was playing Genk, I think it was, he was playing more of a number 10 off striker role. So having this forward lineup here will be able to best bring out all 3 of their abilities, be able to like cut back and be able to run past the back line, because David will more than likely make a good play. Alphonso Davies, I think he'll be on for the first 45 minutes, and then he'll take him out right away, right? Because he did have an injury concern, which thankfully is not going to stop him from playing this World Cup. But I want to see how he does with the first team, at least for the first half, and then we'll take him out right away. But what he brings to the table is second to none on this team. He is our talisman, and he is the guy that will more than likely stir this drink and see how far we go from here. So that is the reason why I have it as a 4-3-3 system, because it can also morph into a 3-5-2 or a 3-4-3, because I have it covered, because both Davies and Buchanan has both been used as wing backs in their respective clubs. Mm-hmm. So being able to bring more of a defensive presence in this, it just it just makes the game extremely flexible for Herdman to do. So that's how I have it set up.
Okay, let's move on to let me bring up polls here.
Yeah, you know what? And you could bring up mine, but I'm
Yes.
starting to lead as Jordan started explaining his 4-3-3.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm starting because from an attacking perspective you can, and then from a defensive you can morph. So I had it.
I can see this lineup and it morphing into a 4-3-3 where
right.
Larea moves into midfield, which he has done for Canada, where he's played a weird wing back / midfield role. It wasn't
against Honduras.
Yeah, it wasn't his best game at all.
Yeah, it wasn't.
But it's something Herdman has done. But even if it's not, and it is a regular 3-4-3 or 5-2-3, depending on how you want to look at it, your formation is something I definitely can see at the World Cup for sure. But go ahead.
Yeah, it's as I'm looking at and sorry, not that I'm flip flopping, but as I'm looking at it, I'm just wondering Larea, because of I don't know, this year he hasn't been as consistent, and I wonder if Nottingham Forest kind of broke him a bit.
Mm-hmm.
He hasn't been consistent, but I could also see this perspective because you have. I mean, I know Buchanan can play wingback, but I want to see the speed up top, man. Especially when we keep saying Herdman keeps saying that, you know what, we're gonna play our same way. We're not gonna defend. We're gonna attack. And if that's the case, then I could see Adekube and Larea playing that wingback role. And of course, as Jordan said earlier, Adekube has to play to help cover Miller. Because I think in those games, I'm not sure Adekube was playing left wing back in the Honduras game. I don't.
He didn't start. He didn't.
No, he didn't start. No, he didn't. And I think he became a revelation as he started progressing to the World Cup.
It was against Costa Rica where he solidified his start on the team, and he doesn't look back since.
He hasn't looked back
because Larea was actually playing on the left side at the beginning, right?
And Davies was playing early on. Was playing left wing back into qualifying, not in the Octo, but early on in World Cup qualifying, Davies was playing left wing back as well.
My only other, so either this role, but as we were also talking, we might need to solidify the midfield so I could see it where we go to a back four. That's why I was looking at Jordan. I'm like, maybe Larea needs to come off. We play that back four and we still hold more of a depth of Ozo instead of Larea moving to that off kind of midfield. Davies, my only concern with Davies, and I'm not trying to be negative, my only concern is he going to be comfortable enough to play that free role? And I see Herdman pushing that free role that he's playing. Ideally, still perfectly, to be honest with you, I would have liked to see him in this World Cup. And hear me out. In a left back, in his left wing back. The only reason why is I find that when he plays that at Bayern, he has more freedom and more room to use his skill set to be able to run at people. But it's neither here nor there. I know they're trying to groom him into a different player. Jordan Alba, same thing with him when he played at Bayern, he played defensive, and then when he played for his country, he played a different role. Same thing with Davies. So I totally understand, Herdman trying to give him the freedom because Davies wants to play more up top. So for me, I would take out Larea, and I probably would also go with what Jordan stated and play that back four, just to be on the safe side. But still keep that top three. Okay, that top three, man. Those two on like Buchanan. I didn't think he would be able to keep up his dribbling skills. I was just like, oh my gosh, is he gonna over dribble? But he has been consistently doing it, and even coming back from injury, you could tell he's growing at Bruges. And I'd really love to see this front three to see even on the counter how they'll play.
Okay, I agree with what you have to say there, and with what Jordan, and as you'll see in a moment when I have mine up in a second. Where did I put it? There we go. Okay, there we go. Make it full screen, zoom in, and Bob's your on. Here we go. So,
Yes.
okay, you'll see Osorio is in a bit of a weird spot right now, but I'll explain it. So I have the exact same lineup as Jordan. And the reason why Osorio is in a kind of weird position is because what this formation allows you to do is it allows you to switch to the 3-4-3 by moving Buchanan to right wing back and then just pushing Osorio further forward. So I just put Osorio in that weird spot because he can move around depending on how we want to set
That's what I
up.
was looking at too.
Yeah.
Because Osorio pushes forward a lot. So.
Yeah, so Osorio can push forward and join the front three, and then Buchanan would join the back five. I do find, especially when we have a lot of the ball, and was very apparent against Bahrain, is that when we play a back five, it really is a back three. Like those, like Larea and Edwards were pushed up so high, like if when we turned over the ball, there was no chance that they were going to be making it back.
Right.
I find
That's
if you
why
play,
Villa got cooked.
yeah. So if you play a back four and you say Johnson and Adekubi, be responsible. Like, yes, overlap when the ball's on your side, be an option, but be responsible and worry about defending first, then worrying about going forward. And I think if you play a back forward, it allows your defenders to just focus on defending while your wing backs just offer some attacking outlets when needed. One pushes up, one stays back. But we saw against Bahrain, and we're not going to, if we're being honest, in the World Cup, we're not going to have all of the ball. We against Croatia and against Belgium, we're going to maybe have 35% of the ball. Against Morocco, maybe it'll be more 50-50, but we're not going to have a game where we dominate possession and have 65% of the ball. That's not going to happen.
It'll be closer to the States.
Yeah. But like I've got exactly the same lineup as Jordan, and as we converted Paul to doing, maybe the 4-3-3 is the way to go.
Yeah.
I'm going to shout out that although I don't have it as a preference and I don't see it, I can say maybe Kone starting over Osorio, maybe depending on how the Japan game goes, because Kone, like I said earlier, I'm going to re-apologize. So I've never doubted his ability. I've never doubted his potential, but I doubted his ability to make an impact for Canada, especially in this World Cup cycle. And clearly, although he didn't play a big role in World Cup qualifying, he really stood up for Montreal this year. And he definitely is deserving of a big move to Europe. I wonder if he has a solid outing in the World Cup, if a bigger team will come after him, because there was those rumors that he was going to, was it Sheffield? I believe.
Yes.
Although I don't know if I don't know if I want him to go to Sheffield after the way they've treated Daniel Jefferson, but I think Kone definitely maybe go to a Ligue 1 team, mid-table team. Maybe he'll need to go on loan. Maybe go on loan to Belgium, but I think a team in a Big Five league will come after him. It doesn't mean he'll play for that Big Five team right away. But I need to apologize for doubting his ability for this year and only seeing his long-term potential. But I can see him starting. But besides that, I can maybe see Richie Larea starting if we do something similar to what Paul said. Maybe Hoylett gets involved somehow as a right wing back, potentially also maybe in a midfield role. Maybe in like this Osorio role where I mentioned, where maybe sometimes in the midfield, maybe he's going to sometimes push a little bit further forward. Maybe you can see Hoylett in that role. I think Piet is somebody who we will see as a defensive reassurance substitute. Laren is a substitute we can see if we're pushing for a goal. But I'll be honest, a lot of these players, like 10 of these players, I'll be shocked if they see the pitch. Obviously, hopefully everybody gets some minutes against Japan, even if it's just 20 minutes or 15. But going into the World Cup, just going by how Herman doesn't really like to rotate, and the only reason he rotated in the octagonal was the big distance having to travel and the short amount of time between games. Instead of having 3 days between games, we have 5. Yeah, and injuries too. Well, so yeah, like you said, obviously there's injuries. We'll see more players, but that's the lineup I have. I'll come to you, Jordan. What is one player who do you think really needs to have an excellent performance against Japan? Oh, I think Jordan.
Yeah, I think Jordan got
okay. Okay, Paul, I'll come to you. Who's one player you think needs to have an excellent game against Japan, who really needs to show their worth?
Good question. Because with Herdman, everybody's pretty much solidified. But I'll probably go with this. Not to say that I don't think he will play, but I think Ozo. So I think Ozo needs to show his worth. As much as it sounds ambiguous because of what we were saying about him before, but I do think he needs to show his worth if he wants to be in the starting 11. So I think that will be for him to push in the starting 11. I think Ozo will need to show his worth in the Japan game. And I'm just saying that outside of, I'm not saying the other 10 people that's not playing. I'm not even going to go to them. I'm talking about people that will be playing.
Yeah, I agree.
He probably needs to show his work just because he hasn't been playing on a consistent basis. As much as he played well in Bahrain, I think he wants to start, and so he'll need to show Herdman his worth in order to be in the starting 11.
I'm gonna come to you, Jordan. What is one player who you think really needs to have a good performance against Japan, whether it's they're starting or they're coming off the bench?
I think Atiba Hutchinson needs to show that he can still do what he needs to do for this Canadian team, because he has had a lot of injury concerns for the past couple of months. And I know he just started in Besiktas just the other day, and I'm glad for that. But I want to make sure that he can maintain the level that he has played in throughout the entire octagonal. And we definitely need him to have a decent, showing in Japan to make sure we are confident what we can do moving forward. Because more than anything, he is our current captain, and we want to make sure he can still get the job done. And more than anything, this has been a lifelong dream for him. So for him to have a good showing, it will just prove to him and everybody else that we are ready for this, and let's see what we can do.
Yeah, for me, it might be a bit controversial, and it's not somebody who I think is going to start but come off the bench, is Kyle Larin. I think he will come off the bench in this game to get some minutes, but he really needs to show something, because I'll be honest, I haven't watched Bruges religiously, and he hasn't, and even if I did, it's not like he's been playing a ton for them. But as we know, Larin, he's somebody who drifts in and out of games. And for somebody who's going to be an impact sub, you can't do that. Like, you need to be able to come in and hit the ground running, or Herdman might go for another option and it's not like we even have many options in form besides David up top. Ugbo struggling for minutes I believe you pronounce it Troyes, I think, or something like that. Troyes, okay. Troyes, Cavallini. Cavallini is what Cavallini is. But Cavallini also has his usefulness.
Instant yellow card.
You just throw him on to kick a center back to injure them, or to cause some to be a bit of a disturber.
It's definitely
in the
instant
box.
offense.
Yeah, a disturber, a bit of a battering ram. Like, he has his usefulness. Like, if you put David and Cavallini up top together and just have Cavallini be the target man, like, maybe. Although I would obviously prefer Larin, he's Canada's highest goal scorer of all time, right?
The problem with Larin, he never does well in a substitution role.
I know, but that's what his role is going to be. So he needs to show something when he comes on for his 20 minutes or so, or 10 minutes or so. He's got to really show something in the performance in the game, in my opinion. But I agree with your picks. Atiba needs to show that, yes, he's fit and he can go. And Osorio, he's actually fighting for his starting position. So I agree with your choices. Osorio was my first pick, but I needed to think of somebody else on the fly there, so I went with Larin.
Sorry.
No, don't be sorry. But I think that's going to wrap it up for us today.
Yeah, quickly. Sorry, Chris,
go
quickly.
ahead, Paul.
I wanted to say, I saw while we were doing the show, something was tweeted out. Apparently, Daniil was still going to get picked.
Yes.
But because of his injury, he actually stepped aside. He told Herman to actually let somebody else get his spots. So that's how your face, Jordan. It's hilarious.
He was going to go even though he's injured?
Yeah. So he was still going to go in the 26th because we know it's going to be tourists, as you said.
Yes.
So he was still going to go in the 26th, but he said let somebody else get an opportunity. So that's how Waterman. I saw that tweeted Peter Galindo actually tweeted that. Yeah.
So what that tells me is Waterman was going regardless. It's Fraser who was the additional person.
Yes, because Fraser, they just tweeted out him crying in the hotel when he got the call. So yeah. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. I was questioning whether Fraser was in it the entire time and Waterman was the replacement.
Yeah.
But hearing this, clearly Fraser was the replacement for Henry and Waterman was going regardless. But yeah, good on Henry. Even though yes, they're going to be tourists, you want somebody who can actually play if needed. So and if you're just going to not play anyways, you just go as part of the entourage or whatever. You can go as the security guard or the bodyguard, the ball boy, the water boy.
Water boy.
Yeah, I want to see Daniil. I want to see Daniil Henry wearing a bib, running on to give some water or something like that. Give the players.
He can't run. He can't run. He'll pull his other hamstring.
Wheelchair him out there. Wheelchair him out there. To give the players a team talk or something when things aren't going well. Because I'm sure we're going to have water breaks during the Qatar World Cup. Unless all the stadiums are all the stadiums roofed?
No, there are different types of stadiums actually.
Okay.
Some are removable and some are really high class.
But
some
do
are
all of them
indoor.
have roofs? Do they?
No, not all
indoor. Okay.
I was watching the Arab Cup last year, and all the 2-3 biggest stadiums, they all have roofs. And then there's a couple others which are probably going to be more for training facilities after the first round.
Okay.
They're domeless, so that's how it's going to be. And the stadiums are going to be really beautiful when we first look at it.
Yeah, I saw the one for where we're going to play in Belgium. It looks really nice, though, man. Yeah. As much as all the other, unfortunately, the workers and stuff that's behind the scenes, unfortunate. But when you just look at it,
FIFA. Never mind people saying, "Oh, do not take a stand on any of this. Let's just play soccer, guys."
Let's not just leave politics out of it. Yet FIFA is always involved in politics.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Sure.
Oh my God!
It's
only deal with politics that benefit us, and if it doesn't, then don't talk about politics.
Right.
But I'm South African. I unfortunately missed the South African World Cup by 3 months because I immigrated to Canada in 2010. I don't regret my decision. I had the opportunity to come here, so I came here. But those World Cup stadiums are so beautiful, but underused since.
Really, eh?
Yeah, they
were built outside of shanties, I think.
They were built next to existing stadiums that are still used. So it's
why?
What was the point of building this whole new stadium if we're not going to move everything over to the? This is a story for another thing. But
sounds like the NFL.
But it was FIFA's mandate, right? We had to build all new stadiums, so we built all new stadiums. They wanted all sorts of VIP access to FIFA delegates and brown envelope payments to Swiss bank accounts and the Cayman Islands and all that sort of stuff. But
I was literally listening to a podcast about that called Kings of Referral World Cup, and they went into great detail about everything that was happening between South Africa, Brazil having to be forced to repeal their ban on beer, to Russia because of Vladimir Putin. Anyways, we're not talking about that now.
Yeah,
just something for you guys to look up when you guys.
I'll look it up. Thanks for that.
Yeah, there's also the Netflix documentary that came out yesterday about FIFA scandals. I need to watch that. I'm going to actually watch that after this. Also, if anybody hasn't been watching I believe it's the We Can series.
We should call this topic Extra Time.
Yeah, be there. But it's just something for the people to watch after this. There's some good content out there, both FIFA World Cup related as well as Canada Soccer related. But I think that's gonna round it up for us today. I want to thank my co-hosts for joining me today, Paul and Jordan. Their links to their Twitter accounts are in the description below. Thank you very much for joining me here today. I wouldn't have been able to do this without you.
Thanks for having us. Awesome job, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a bit of a learning experience being the first content we're creating on Canadian Footy Fan Channel and the first time using StreamYard. I'm not going to lie, StreamYard is a very user-friendly tool, but some things I needed to learn on the fly. I want to thank all the viewers. Make sure you subscribe to Canadian Footy Fan Channel. I hope to, at the very least, to start off, provide content a few times a week. And hopefully this podcast, well, not this series, Canadian Footy Assembly, can be a weekly thing that we do going forward. Make sure you smash the like button, give your thoughts, opinions, and feedback in the comment section below. All support and interaction is greatly appreciated. This has been episode 1 of the Canadian Footy Assembly on the Canadian Footy Fan Channel. I have been your host, Chris, and we're signing out.
Stand